Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you again. And as you know, recently, if you follow this podcast, we have passed our 5-year anniversary, which we are very excited about.
Let's go.
5 years of podcasting. By the day, literally every day, Monday through Friday, I podcast, and it's been a gift. It's changed our lives, to be quite honest. Elvin and I talk all the time about how the EdUp community has come together in different forms over time, and really we've made a big impact on higher education, and could not have done it without the guests, without the hosts through the EdUp Experience Network, and of course our listeners and supporters, partners, and so on. That being said, and I want to tell you all, if you don't know this by now, this quick story where I wrote this really good article, or at least I thought I was really good. And I went out to the trade publications, and it was a positive higher ed article. It wasn't anything really negative about it. And the trade publications kind of said, nah, we don't think it's right for us. We don't think it's right. And I was like, man, I'm just begging for somebody to publish my article. I said, why am I doing that? I'm going to take a part of the EdUp Experience website that Elvin and I have, and we're going to start publishing articles that our colleagues write as they write good things about higher education and things that the community needs to know about. And that's called EdUp Editorials. And we are always publishing great content these days from our colleagues across higher ed, presidents, former presidents, faculty, staff, whomever. And people go, what are your editorial guidelines? I say, write what you want. If it's a positive story about higher ed, we're gonna publish it. We're going to get you a link. We're going to push it out to our audiences. We're going to promote it on LinkedIn. So you want to get your voice heard, and, well, you want to have your voice written down and then heard, you can do that through EdUp Editorials, and that's as a service we want to provide to all of our colleagues across higher ed. So we aren't begging for our information to be spread across the internet. We can do it in a positive way through EdUp. Okay, I got all that out. It's a lot. But now I only have to do a little bit of the talking, and my guest has to do most of the talking. I'm going to bring her in now, but I have a feeling that she can carry a conversation. That something tells me about her that she can carry a conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, she's Dr. Lisa Coleman. She's the president at Adler University. Dr. Lisa, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Am I right, or am I right that you know how to carry a conversation?
Well, we'll see, won't we?
What are you going to talk about today, Dr. Coleman? No, it's all good. So listen, Adler University, level set for us. Tell us about Adler. Are you going to miss Ellucian Live this year?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So you might as well register right now at elive.ellucian.com. Ellucian Live 2025, April 6th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. Do not miss it.
We're excited to announce the first ever, first of its kind higher education podcast conference, brought to you by Edu Alliance, the EdUp Experience, and Podium. This is happening Saturday, July 12th at the University of Illinois Chicago campus. This is an in-person event, one day only, the first of its kind. This is for people working in and around higher education who are interested in starting a podcast, who may have a podcast, want to learn more about podcasting. So if you want to be there, please go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn how you can get your early bird registration, see who the keynote will be, and how you can submit proposals to be a part of this amazing inaugural conference. So that, again, go to higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Well, you can go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
So Adler University is an institution. It's a private university, and we're located in Chicago, Illinois, and Vancouver, British Columbia, which I'll talk a little bit more about in just a moment. We have master's and doctoral students. And our university was named after a person by the name of Alfred Adler, who was one of a physician and psychotherapist and founder of what is called Adlerian psychology. He lived between the years of 1870 to 1937. And he was a breakaway from Freud. And I think the key breakaway from Freud is that while they were very interested in brain science, neuroscience, both of them, Adler breaks away and says that what's also important is to really think about your community and social engagements. So also to think about in kind of layperson's terms, a kind of nurturing environment and not just the scientific environment. Adler University was founded by Rudolf Dreikurs, and a psychiatrist that immigrated to Chicago in 1937 after Adler's death, and of course was an Adlerian scholar. And the Adlerian Psychology Institute was founded, changed its name to the Institute in 1954. And many think of it in relation to the Chicago School of Psychology.
Yeah.
So that those are kind of in the post-World War II era, psychology becoming really cemented into the kind of fabric of the nation. And you see a number of these schools sort of emerge from institutes to colleges to universities. We became a university a little bit ago, and we're very happy to have both campuses. I have been the president since September 4th, 2024. So I have been the president less than 6 months, but it's a rapid pace, and I'm excited to be at Adler and its mission, which is really about serving communities and really thinking about these issues around mental health and how do we provide services across a range of different people, ages, etc.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to be in higher education. But by the way, very recently, administration changes have happened in Washington, and things come out in the news, and everybody freaks out, and then they're taking them. So everything is kind of being stirred up a little bit, and there is an additional focus, I would say, on higher education and how we're teaching, how students are learning, what we're teaching, how they're learning. So it makes being a college president very visible, maybe even more visible than it was before, although it wasn't that long ago that some college presidents were in front of Congress and so on. So it's a heck of a time for you to step in. Did that go through your mind at all in September of 2024? Like, you know what? There's a lot of eyeballs on college presidents these days. But particularly if you're a person of color as a college president, you're in the minority of college presidents. There aren't as many people of color in presidential positions, although there are a lot of students of color these days and becoming the new majority. And this is a historic appointment for you, right? Because you're the first person of color to be a college president at Adler. Take all that together. Did you just go, you know what, I'm going to give this, I'm stepping in, I'm going to do this? Did you go, well, let's see how it goes? Did you trip and fall into it? Talk to us about how this happmes. There's a lot of questions in there, by the way. You just take it how you want it.
As some of my friends have said, what made you make this decision, particularly at this juncture? Were you reading the news at all, Lisa? Did you follow social media? What's going on? So yes, absolutely, very well aware of what's happening across higher education. I've been in higher education over 30 years. And so I started as a pup, as they say, and although I've had a couple forays outside of higher ed, mostly those still linked to higher ed. And what I will say is that higher ed ebbs and flows. And so, yes, there are real challenges, but actually there was an article, I do believe it was yesterday in the New York Times, where it was about, and if I'm misquoting where it was, I just read a couple of newspapers. So
I misquote things all the time, so don't worry.
Yeah, okay, great. But it was about people returning to school, actually. During turbulent times, people return to school for certifications, for the kind of security that comes with higher education having survived over 300, 400 years, right? And so I think that certainly there are challenges, and higher education is an industry like in a sector like other sectors, and there are challenges that we have to navigate. I think kind of looking at the sector and thinking about some of the challenges, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, to be sure. And there was a lot going on even before the shifts in the most recent administration in the United States and provincial shifts in Canada. And so as a result, I think, right, some of us were already kind of prepared and ready to kind of deal with a lot of the shifts that were already happening, and now there's more. So we will weather all of the various aspects of what this brings. And I think as a college president, one of the things often is you spend a lot of time in education. You've
Hmm.
learned a lot about higher education, hopefully. So you're not coming into this brand new, right? It's not as if right, a college president more often than not has spent an inordinate amount of time either running something, right, thinking about business and the business acumen, or nonprofit organizational kinds of structure, or the integration of both, as well as being in higher education. And so people are usually coming with a lot of skills. I think I bring a lot of skills to the position, and I felt ready at this time to be ready to take on this role. And the mission of Adler aligned very much with my work. As you
That's
mentioned,
really
I'm the
important,
first.
right? Like you got to be leading a university that you feel. You got to feel it
You got to
because
feel
the
it, and
job's too hard otherwise.
the job's too hard. I have a former colleague and president who said to me, "You have to fall in love a little bit," and I fell in love with Adler, and so
Tell them
and
like it is.
others had courted me.
Yeah. You were being courted?
I was
Nice.
being
Nice.
courted,
It's nice to
but
be courted, huh?
Adler and I made the match, as they say,
Yeah.
and so I would say that I'm excited about where we are. Mental health is an
Yeah.
issue that is really concerning for a lot of people. Health, equity, access to health, all of those kinds of issues. And as you mentioned, I'm the first person of color, I'm the first woman president of the institution. And I think that gives me perspective, different perspectives, right? Everybody comes with different perspectives depending on where you were born, how you were brought up, where you live, your educational experiences, your experiences in leadership. And I think I'm bringing all of that to this role. And some of that relates to, if we think about mental health issues across the gender spectrum, boys are really experiencing
Yeah.
a host of mental health issues. How do those impact women? In a host of ways, right? In families, etc. Women are experiencing, right, mental health issues in a host of ways. People along all kinds of spectrums. And so this intersection with health and education, I think is a crux of where we are. And we have a lot of partnerships and a lot of things that we're able to do. But I feel ready. I feel that my background and my experience has hopefully, hopefully we will do well. As I said, I'm less than 6 months in, so we will see.
Well, it must be 6 really good months because you have a fantastic attitude about it, which you have to maintain, right? I mean, you could get rattled when your door is shut and nobody's in your office and that door opens and somebody is within earshot. As a president, you have to project that confidence and the decision making ability. Do you feel extra pressure because you're the first in these categories? Is there like a pressure that comes with that, or you just go, you know what, this is the state of the world. The university has come around. I'm just the chosen one, or do you feel personal pressure?
Well, I like to answer this question in that I've been the first a lot. Almost all of my
Mm,
roles, I've been the first. And so in that way, I've gotten used to the first. But what I would say is, I always answer this question by saying I'm building on the legacy of other firsts.
yeah.
I know a lot of firsts, right? I've met them along the way. They're older than I am, many of them. Some of them are their same age peers. And so they have provided the foundation upon which I'm able to build my work. And so in that way, certainly I feel certain pressures, but I feel a certain responsibility, I think, to
Yeah.
advance the work.
That's a better
And
word, I think.
yeah, and there's a quote by a poet, a former professor who's deceased now, but she was one of my mentors when I was very, very young. And I had a job where I brought speakers. It was a great job, 'cause kind of like your job, but in person back then.
Hmm.
You flew all over the country.
In
Anyway,
person, I don't even know what
in
that
person,
means.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Um, and her name is June Jordan. She was a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and a good friend of Angela Davis's, actually. And she came to visit to speak. She and Angela Davis at the time. And anyway, and she has a quote from one of her texts that says, quote, "We are the ones we've been waiting for," end quote. And I think that we are. We're the ones we've been waiting for. When I look at my students, as you mentioned, the students are dynamic and diverse and really interesting and bringing things that I never even imagined would happen, including all kinds of technologies that I didn't even know would exist. And so I am I do think we are the ones we've been waiting for. And I include the students in that. And I feel grateful that I've had the opportunity to work in higher education.
I like that.
It's a good way to answer that. Let's talk about the university just a little bit. Having master's and doctoral degrees and being a graduate institution presents a host of great positioning opportunities and also many challenges, right? And the first challenge from somebody who has spent over 20 years in enrollment in marketing is I don't have that undergraduate pipeline to beef my programs up, to expect that I'm going to get X% of my bachelor degree students to come into my master's degree, which a lot of universities count on. Although colleges and universities, by and large, are not great at customer loyalty. So that's a whole nother thing. But, that means you have to have dynamite programs and a great reputation, right? So there's so much that rides upon that quality and reputation piece. How do you grow? What are you doing to grow programs? Is it about a number of programs that you have to have? Is it about taking and feeding the winners, so to speak, to make sure that you're growing what can be grown? How do you look at what's driving forward, what maybe isn't, as you look at programs? So I know growth is probably important for you. Can you talk about some strategies around sustainability and growth?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is on every college president's mind: undergrad, graduate, private, public institutions, enrollment. And certainly as we think about the cliffs in enrollment that lots and lots of people have talked about, I'm sure people have come on your podcast and talked about that excessively, so I won't go on, but we do know that we are seeing, right, in terms of projected enrollments, some pretty steep cliffs in terms of decline, especially when we look at enrollments for undergraduate populations, which does impact graduate populations to some degree. But what I like to say about graduate education is we've seen some shifts in graduate education. And the first shift is it's not a pipeline just from undergraduate anymore. I think that there was this idea for a long time, and many of us, meaning, shall I say, a more seasoned generation, we went straight through, some of us, or at least maybe a year or two. But what we're seeing in graduate education are two things. People going back to school, much like when you see in MBA programs, right, getting a lot of experience, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of experience in going back to school for master's or doctoral programs. And that's also for certifications. So now I'm the head of a nonprofit mental health organization. I want my doctorate. I had my master's, but now I want my doctorate, right? So we're seeing the application of, for instance, right, the master's and the doctoral in a different kind of different platforms, different sectors than just the traditional PhD going into higher education route. And that has been changing over time. And so then why I would seek a doctoral degree is different. The other, what we're seeing is increased certifications, right? And also online programs. And when I say online, I don't mean the full master's or doctoral programs, but certifications for people to learn some new things. So we're thinking about certifications. We already have some in place. Global education. We have a campus in Vancouver. We are really thinking about how do you think about yourself in a global market, which is different than just thinking about yourself in the US. You said earlier, that being a minority within a minority. There are only about 3,950 presidents, college presidents of accredited universities. And then I'm one of the people of color. So you get smaller and smaller and smaller. But what that means is you have to think about your niche and your brand.
Yes.
And so who are you? Who is Adler? And yes, we are shaping that up to some degree, right? I mean, I think institutions are on journeys and go through iterations. But when I think of who we are, our mission is to serve those who've been underserved in terms of thinking about health, mental health, and then also that building partnerships across dynamic institutions. And those are corporate partnerships, hospitals and associations, other universities. I'll give you just a couple examples. We have a partnership with Vancouver Community College in Vancouver, where we're doing assessments for them for students with disabilities. Because what happens is you have to have assessments as students come in. Our students are helping do that. Another is working with Northwestern Hospital And our clinicians are working there, providing wraparound service in emergency centers for people coming into the hospitals. So 2 university partnerships. A nonprofit partnership that we've just started is with Fulbright Canada. I'm very happy about this. We're going to train leaders and really think about that intersection of when you're a Fulbright scholar, you go across the world and you might encounter people across a mental health spectrum. And so how are you integrating that into the work that you're doing across various communities? We're super excited, Michael Hayes and I, and it's going to be great. We unveiled it and we're relaunching it in the spring. And I'll say finally, when we look at all of our partnerships in Chicago, which I think is very important because we need to have local partnerships both in Vancouver and Chicago. And so that's everything from working with after school programs, really thinking about how do we embed ourselves? Why am I talking about partnerships? Because that's about growth. If you have a good reputation, you have your niche and your brand is well known, both locally, nationally, and globally, then you can really expand your enrollment. And the last thing that I will say about this is alumni. And you sort of mentioned this, you hinted at it. In higher education, we haven't done a great job at many institutions of re-engaging our alums. The good thing is that I've worked at a lot of different institutions in a lot of different capacities, and I've thought a lot about alumni. And there are 2 reasons, for the most part, that alums give back. One, they loved it, and we're very good at bringing those alumni back. But there's the other group. They hated it. They didn't like it. Or maybe they were a little ambivalent, but they definitely weren't on the side of favoring. And so what I've done is really try to re-engage those communities. Let's look at what you didn't experience as positive. And as you, in your words, let's move toward the positive and let's engage that work. I always say, and this is another author that I love, criticism, right, is one way to move forward as well. And we just have to tweak it so that we're integrating it into some positive next steps. And so some of that is then about that engagement with our alumni, our faculty, and our staff as well, to really think about growth opportunities with them and make sure that we're engaging our faculty and staff in that student-alumni connection as well.
100%.
Getting everybody engaged is like the most important part of growth, where everybody's thinking, how do we grow? How do we grow? Right? Because if you don't get everybody's mindset there, then that creates inertia and it's hard to change. And you brought up, by the way, I always talk about this in the podcast, and when I do keynotes and stuff, I talk about Marriott. I talk about Marriott rewards, or whoever stays in a hotel. You stay at your hotel. You choose Hilton or Hyatt or Marriott, wherever. But if I'm not getting points at Hilton, I'm not staying there. I'm getting 75% extra points at Marriott. And they've developed these loyalty programs, and you don't divert from them very often. And then you look at higher ed, and I don't know about you, Lisa, but I've got 3 degrees from 3 institutions. And I can't even remember, even if the institution I went to for my master's or for my doctorate, I can't remember anyone telling me like, hey, you've graduated with your master's. We don't have doctoral programs, but we partner with so-and-so, so you should go there because it would have been great for the institution to get a revenue share or whatever it might be, or articulation, whatever. And we don't do a good job of letting students know that. So what happens is they move, right? Maybe they take an online program and then they move and then they look locally. And so it's hard to keep that loyalty there. And I've always thought that if we could just turn the dial on the loyalty piece, where we recognize Netflix, right? What do you think of when you think of TV and streaming? You think Netflix. They've done a good job of being the primary. Yeah, you might go to Disney and you might go to, Amazon Prime, but really it's Netflix, right? So how do we turn the dial so when somebody says, what do you think of when you think of higher education? Oh, I think of Adler University, or I think of XYZ University, right? I mean, that's what we're going for. That's differentiation, isn't it? At Lucian Live 2025, we're going to explore the magic of innovation. We want to imagine, believe, and achieve. It's happening April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to explore technology, modernization, and
artificial intelligence.
Explore the latest technology solutions, discover industry insights, and make valuable connections as a global community. It's time to register for Ellucian Live 2025 at elive.ellucian.com.
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Yes, absolutely. And I will go further because what you're saying is exactly right. Netflix isn't just Netflix, I'm turning on Netflix. You'll
Yeah.
say I'm turning on Netflix when you're turning on Disney. It's like Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah,
Or it's like
you're right. It's
Google,
soda.
right? It's like
Soda
I'm
is
using
Coca-Cola.
Bing, but I'm Googling, right? So
Yeah.
it's become kind of right. The omnipresence of that, right, is very important, I think, in terms of what you're saying. And so, yes, that's exactly where I would like to head with Adler, right? It's that when you think of mental health, you think of equity and provision, and you think of partnerships. That's who you think of, that you will think of us. And why is that? It's because, and I think that too often in higher education, which when we talk about ruptures to the sector, we've often thought of ourselves as only competitors, to your point.
Yeah.
We haven't thought of ourselves as partners, and we exist in silos: private, public, first, 4 year, 2 year, 3 year, right? And then when we see ourselves as competing against each other in that enrollment arena. But what I like to say is, even with the cliffs, what we know is it's about we can bring people back into higher education. It's a question of how do you carve out your own niche with others? And what do those partnerships look like? And that's why I mentioned Vancouver Community College or Northwestern in particular, right? Because those are local partnerships that we have with other universities. And when I also think about this reimagination of higher education. The reimagination of higher education is through partnerships, and not just external partnerships as we thought of internship programs with corporate America or foundations or nonprofits. It's with other higher education institutions. I can't say all of the partnerships that we're exploring right now, but I will say we're exploring another one with an institution in Canada that works very heavily on Indigenous, with Indigenous communities. As you may know, in Canada, they have different laws and regulations as
Yes.
it pertains to truth and reconciliation. And so doing some work there. But those are the kinds of things that I think in the reimagination, when people say things like innovation, innovation has to be particular. And what do we mean by innovation? And innovation and radical innovation is different than incremental innovation. And incremental innovation is some of the work that we've already been doing. But radical innovation is going to mean we're going to have to radically reimagine our partnerships in ways that we've never done before. And that's funding streams that you mentioned,
Yeah.
right? Shared cost structures in ways that we haven't done historically, all of those kinds of things. And I do think that those models will differentiate who is able to then move forward. I'm going to give you one example that's not Adler. I hesitate because I like to talk about my institution, but I'll talk about another institution that just did a partnership, and it's Ohio State, the Ohio State, and Denison University in Ohio, and they just partnered on a wellness center. The Ohio State has a huge, of course, medical part of their institution. Granville, Ohio, and Newark, Ohio is an underserved medically community, mostly working class white people from factories, industries in that area. Denison and the Ohio State partnered to open a wellness center at Denison to help serve that community, right? So partnerships, health, wellness, two higher education institutions, really thinking about how do you reimagine partnership. And I said I was walking across, I'll go back to brand and differentiation. This is a moment that I'll never forget. I was walking across the Harvard Yard, Harvard University, and it was the first year students were there, and someone yelled out OH, and someone across the yard yelled back IO. And I was like, that's the kind of branding that Adler should have, right?
Mm.
That there's that kind of response when you hear Adler. And so I've never forgotten it, and I probably will never forget it. But as a president, I try to hold on to those things also, those good ideas, as they say, that come from other institutions, and I can recognize other leaders that are also doing great work.
Amazing.
I have to tell you that I love what you said, because branding is is so important these days. And it takes focus, right? It takes work. It just doesn't happen. You have to really, really work at it. And as you were talking, because enrollment, you said enrollment's on everybody's mind, and you're right. Everybody, and it should be. I mean, that's how we create sustainable business models. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm an undergraduate. Let's say I'm an undergraduate institution. Most of my revenue is probably coming from my bachelor degree students. I mean, that's where my revenue. So my infrastructure is designed to serve that. That's where my faculty expenses, all my fixed expenses, building costs, everything is built within this risky demographic that is projected to decline. Boy, it would be nice to be unburdened from that and have master's and doctoral degrees that I can re-engage the market. I don't have all of my money poured into this infrastructure that is projected to decline. I've got more freedom. Now I can expand in ways that are really important. And then I think about that, the unburdened financials. Now it's going to be harder to grow because you have to really be powerful in marketing with those bachelor's and master's degrees. But boy, AI is causing a lot of mental health problems and will. So then you go, bam, I've got mental health programs. There's going to be a great need for mental health counseling at both master's and doctoral levels. And from a business model sustainability standpoint, I am not burdened by the infrastructure of the bachelor's degree, which is a beast.
Exactly.
And I was just thinking about all that being kind of in your favor.
No, this is exactly right. And you mentioned two important points. One is working with schools in the actual mental health area, right? That's the latter point,
Yeah.
is this thinking about schools, universities, and I mentioned even our after school programs in the K through 12 in Chicago area. What we're finding is teachers need us, professors need us, right? They need us just as much because they don't know how to deal with what's happening in the classrooms and what's emerging in the residential facilities, et cetera, that you're talking about in the undergraduate populations, which are in residence. That's where I spent the bulk of my career, right? We're an undergraduate 4-year institution with graduates, so
Yeah.
universities. And so what we know is there's a heavy cost for that, but also there are increased responsibilities for that kind of local parentis, right, experience. And so as a result, the mental health, the concerns, the evaluations, all of that, and those partnerships with schools like ours, because our students have to do clinical hours. So it's great. Right. And that's why I was talking about even with some of the two other partnerships that I mentioned. I think the other piece that you mentioned, which is back to the kind of thinking about pipelines, what a lot of schools are trying to do, to your point, is develop online programs or develop new master's programs. And what we've seen is a lot of failure in this space, right? We've just seen a lot of failure. And part of that, to your point, is they don't have the infrastructure. The infrastructure is very focused on undergraduates. And so to try to build these programs can be very difficult and costly. And the experiment is costly for a failure. Even if you succeed, you might fail a couple of times. And in this ecosystem and in these markets, back to your point, it's a very risky endeavor, particularly when we look at institutions for the most part, unless you're like 5 or 6 that are really, we're almost all challenged economically in some ways. And so as a result, partnerships with graduate institutions where you can even think about, for instance, with VCC, Vancouver Community College, we've tailored the work there, right? So really thinking about those partnerships and long-term sustainability, I also think is about long-term sustainability of higher education, which we haven't talked about as much. But, I like to think about Blockbuster a lot because I'm old. And so Blockbuster was on every corner like Starbucks, because some of the people listening to this will not know what I'm talking about. So it was like Starbucks, but then they let something called Redbox undercut them, and everybody thought it was Netflix, but it was really Redbox. And 7-Eleven, because they refused to look at a kind of middle class economic situation that was happening. And so as a result, right, you could go into 7-Eleven and get your Milk Duds and your popcorn for $2 and come out and get your movie for $1. And you went to Blockbuster and you were still paying, $45.99, right? And so as a result, right, we saw Blockbuster go away. Higher education, I don't think it'll go away, but we have seen lots of closures. We've seen lots of mergers. We've seen places that haven't been able to differentiate. And as a result, I think we have to think about differentiation. As you said, it's really hard work. We also have to think about partnership. And we also have to think about higher education as a sector and what that sector and the shifts, and really study what those shifts look like. And not just in relation to changes in administration, but changes in population growth, changes in
Yeah.
faculty and staff behaviors, employment, the future of work, all of those kinds of things as well.
Well, we want to, as you've gracefully agreed to come back for a mini episode for our subscribers, we're going to bring you back in just a second. But I do want to leave you with an open mic. Lisa, I want you to tell us anything that you think we should know as your audience about Adler University. Ellucian Live is taking place April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida.
You just made the list!
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at Ellucian Live 2025. Join visionary leaders from institutions worldwide as we dive into groundbreaking ideas, cutting-edge solutions, and transformative best practices that will ignite your passion for innovation. This is your chance to connect, collaborate, and propel your institution into the future. Do not miss out.
Let's go!
Did you buy your tickets yet? Higher Education's first podcast conference is coming July 12th. Go to higheredpodcon.com, higheredpodcon.com. Get your tickets. Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.
What can I say? Come join us. We are doing some amazing things at Adler. We are really expanding these notions of health and equity, and how do we really think about engaging people across different spectrums. And we're looking for partners, strong partners, to help us accomplish some really lofty and I think also aspirational, but also goals that we can accomplish. And so I'm looking forward to working with other presidents of universities, corporations, nonprofit organizations. I didn't even begin to talk about the work that we have in the governmental spaces. And we have a lot of work going on in that space as well. And so I'll end with this quote, which is one of my favorite authors. His name is James Baldwin. And James Baldwin has a quote that says, quote, "The world is before you, and you need not take it or leave it as it was when you came in," end quote. So let's change it together. Let's do it together, you all. Great. Thank you so much for letting me be here. And I'm looking forward to the partnerships.
Awesome. I love it. People who end on a quote. I love it. Motivating, right? And that's what we have to do. We have to continue to stay motivated for higher education. Dr. Lisa Coleman is going to come back with us here in a second, so hang tight, Lisa. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. She's Dr. Lisa Coleman. She's president at Adler University, making change. You've just ed up.